Maybe someday I'll find my Bonnie. Or not. Probably not. I'm your host Yusuf, and these are the top 10 chilling things you didn't know about Bonnie and Clyde. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video. Anyways, let's prepare for trouble and make it double!
Prepare for trouble!
Make it double!
Number 10. Bonnie wrote poetry. Okay, this doesn't sound very chilling, but her poetry was actually kinda creepy.
What you writing?
Writing a poem about us.
Yeah? Let me hear it. Come on.
Okay, just let me finish this one.
During her school days, Bonnie excelled at creative writing and writing poetry. While she was imprisoned in 1932 after a failed hardware store robbery, she penned a collection of 10 different poems that she entitled Poetry from Life's Other Side, which included the story of Self-Hurt Sal, a poem about an innocent country girl lured by her boyfriend into a life of crime. Sound familiar?
You've heard the story of Jesse James, of how he lived and died. If you're still in need of something to read, here's the story of Bonnie and Clyde.
You think if I sent that into newspapers it'd print it? I'm gonna do it.
2 weeks before her passing, Bonnie gave a strangely accurate poem about the future of her life to her mother entitled The Trail's End, that finished with the verse, "Someday they'll go down together, and they'll bury 'em side by side. To a few it'll be grief, to the law a relief, but it's termination for Bonnie and Clyde." That slaps, by the way. That's lyrics right there.
You know what you done there? You told my story. You told my whole story right there. One time I told you I was gonna make you somebody, that's what you done for me. You made me somebody they gonna remember.
At the end of each point, I'll be giving you guys some stanzas from her poem. Number 9, Bonnie was wearing a ring before her passing, but it wasn't from Clyde. 6 days before turning 16, Bonnie married high school classmate Roy Thornton. The marriage fell apart very quickly, within months, and Bonnie never again saw her husband after he was imprisoned for robbery in 1929. It seems like Bonnie had a thing for bad boys. Soon after, Bonnie met Clyde, and although the pair fell in love, she never divorced Thornton. On the day Bonnie and Clyde were removed from the world in 1934, she was still wearing Thornton's wedding ring and actually had a tattoo on the inside of her right thigh, with 2 interconnected hearts labeled Bonnie and Roy. Clyde really got the short end of the stick there. No tattoo, no ring. Dang. The first stanza is this. You've read the story of Jesse James, of how he crossed the Great Divide. If you're still in need of something to read, here's the story of Bonnie and Clyde. Now, Bonnie and Clyde are the Barrow Gang. I'm sure you all have read. How they rob and steal, and those who squeal are usually found filled with lead. Number 8, Clyde was rejected from the US Navy. As a teenager, Clyde attempted to enlist in the US Navy, but lingering effects from a serious boyhood illness, possibly malaria or yellow fever, resulted in his medical rejection. It was a hard blow for Clyde, who had already tattooed USN on his left arm. This really is a testament to tattoos. You gotta make sure it's worth it when you get a tattoo. Clyde really should have waited until his acceptance letter arrived for him to get that. Clyde was indeed very pro-Navy and was actually photographed in a sailor suit a couple times. It definitely wasn't a real sailor suit because, you know. The minimum age for enlistment in the US Navy jumped back and forth between 17 and 18 years old. But by the time his birthday rolled around in March of 1926, the enlistment age was 17. By the end of that year, Clyde had been arrested for stealing a car, and even though charges were eventually dropped, this police record may have been enough to prevent him from enlisting if he hadn't failed the physical. Here's the next stanza. There's lots of untruths to these write-ups. They're not as ruthless as that. Their nature is raw. They hate all the law, the stool pigeons, spotters, and rats. They call them cold-blooded butchers. They say they are heartless and mean. But I say this with pride that I once knew Clyde when he was honest and upright and clean. Number 7. Speaking of that car he stole, the notorious criminal Clyde Champion Barrow was first arrested in 1926 for automobile theft after failing to return a car he had rented in Dallas to visit an estranged high school girlfriend. The rental car agency dropped the charges, but the incident remained on Clyde's arrest record. Just 3 weeks later, he was arrested again alongside his older brother, Ivan Buck Barrow, for an even more farcical crime possession of a truckload of stolen turkeys. The turkeys, it turned out, were stolen, and both brothers were arrested. Clyde didn't go to jail, that time at least, but the incident earned him a reputation. Turkey Man Clyde. Law fooled around, kept taking him down, and locking him up in a cell. Till he said to me, "I'll never be free, so I'll meet a few of them in hell." The road was so dimly lighted, there were no highway signs to guide, but they made up their minds, if all roads were blind, they wouldn't give up till they lied. Number 6. Clyde chopped off 2 of his toes in prison. While serving a 14-year sentence in Texas for robbery and automobile theft in January 1932, Clyde decided he could no longer endure the unforgiving work and brutal conditions at the notoriously tough East Ham prison farm. In the hopes of forcing a transfer to a less harsh facility, Clyde severed his left big toe and a portion of a second toe with an axe, although it is not known whether he or another prisoner wielded the sharp instrument. The self-mutilation, which permanently crippled his walking stride and prevented him from wearing shoes while driving, ultimately proved unnecessary as he was released on parole 6 days later. Another example of Clyde really getting the timing wrong on another big decision. It seems Bonnie was the brains of the operations, because if it was Clyde, I think they'd be unlucky in their robberies. The road gets dimmer and dimmer. Sometimes you can hardly see. But it's fight man to man and do all you can, for they know they can never be free. From heartbreak some people have suffered, from weariness some people have cried. But take it all in all, our troubles are small till we get like Bonnie and Clyde. Number 5. Bonnie and Clyde, notorious bank robbers, actually didn't like robbing banks. Take that in. Bonnie, Clyde, and their associates went on a crime spree from the summer of 1932 through the spring of 1934, so they're often associated with other famous outlaws of the era, like bank robber John Dillinger. But the Barrow Gang, Clyde was the undisputed leader, considered robbing banks too much trouble. Instead, they targeted shops and gas stations, which were less risky. That also means they didn't amass large sums of money and resorted to cracking open gumball machines for extra change.
Do about Bonnie and Clyde.
We will capture them. Write that down and underline it twice.
Although often depicted as Depression-era Robin Hoods who stole from rich and powerful financial institutions, Bonnie and Clyde staged far more robberies of mom-and-pop gas stations and grocery stores than bank heists. It's kind of disappointing. If a policeman is ended in Dallas and they have no clue or guide, if they can't find a fiend, they just wipe their slate clean and hang it on Bonnie and Clyde. There's 2 crimes committed in America, not a credit to the Barrow mob. They had no hand in the kidnap demand, nor the Kansas City depot job. Number 4. Bonnie was involved in a car accident that left her with a limp. On the night of June 10th, 1933, Clyde, with Bonnie in the passenger seat, was speeding along the rural roads of North Texas so quickly that he missed a detour sign warning of a bridge under construction. The duo's Ford V8 smashed through a barricade at 70 miles per hour and sailed through the air before landing in a dry riverbed. Scalding acid poured out of the smashed car battery and severely burned Bonnie's right leg, eating away at her flesh down to the bone in some places. As a result of the 3rd-degree burns, Bonnie, like Clyde, walked with a pronounced limp for the rest of her life, and she had such difficulty walking that at times she hopped or needed Clyde to carry her. That's a good boyfriend right there. Except when he crashed their car, and when he dragged his girlfriend into a life of crime. Okay, maybe he's not the best boyfriend. A newsboy once said to his buddy, "I wish old Clyde would get jumped. In these awful hard times, we'd make a few dimes if 5 or 6 cops would get bumped. The police haven't got the report yet, but Clyde called me up today. He said, 'Don't start any fights, we aren't working nights, we're joining the NRA.'" Number 3. People at the scene of their passings wanted to take souvenirs of their bodies. On May 23, 1934, a 6-man posse led by former Texas Ranger Captain Frank Hamer ambushed Bonnie and Clyde and pumped more than 130 rounds of steel-jacketed bullets into their stolen Ford V8 outside Sales, Louisiana. After dozens of robberies and 13 slaughters in their name, Bonnie and Clyde's crime spree had finally come to an end. With acrid gun smoke still lingering in the air, gawkers descended upon the ambush site and attempted to leave with macabre souvenirs from the bodies of the outlaws still slumped in the front seat. According to Jeff Gwynn's book, Go Down Together, one man tried to cut off Clyde's ear with a pocket knife, and another attempted to sever his trigger finger before the lawmen intervened. One person in the ordeal, however, managed to clip locks of Bonnie's hair and swaths of her blood-soaked dress. That guy's a lucky guy, he must be selling it on Etsy right now. From Irving to West Dallas Viaduct is known as the Great Divide, where the women are kin, and the men are men, and they won't stool on Bonnie and Clyde. If they try to act like citizens and rent them a nice little flat, about the third night, they're invited to fight by a subgun's rat-a-tat-tat. Number 2, their car is on display at a casino. Following the ambush of Bonnie and Clyde, a Louisiana sheriff who was a member of Hamer's 6-man posse claims the pockmarked Ford V8 sedan still coated with the outlaws' blood and tissue. A federal judge, however, ruled that the automobile stolen by Bonnie and Clyde should return to its former owner, Ruth Warren of Topeka, Kansas. Warren leased and eventually sold the car to Charles Stanley, an anti-crime lecturer who toured fairgrounds with the Demise car, and the mothers of Bonnie and Clyde in tow as sideshow attractions. Still speckled with bullet holes, the Demise car is on display at Whiskey Pete's Resort and Casino near Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hey, isn't that Malcolm there?
They don't think they're too smart or desperate. They know that the law always wins. They've been shot at before, but they do not ignore that demise is the wages of sin. Someday they'll go down together. They'll bury them side by side. To few it'll be grief, to the law a relief, but it's demise for Bonnie and Clyde. Number 1, they were buried separately. Although linked in life, Bonnie and Clyde were split after their passings. While the pair wished to be buried side by side, if you remember her poem, Bonnie's mother, who had disapproved of her relationship with Clyde, had her daughter buried in a separate Dallas cemetery. Clyde was buried next to his brother Marvin underneath a gravestone with his hand-picked epitaph, "Gone but not forgotten." Stories about how Bonnie and Clyde met vary. One account written after their passings says Clyde visited a female friend's house while Bonnie made hot chocolate in the kitchen. Others say they met at a party, but nearly everyone agrees that they were inseparable from the start. As one member of their gang put it, Bonnie was like Clyde. They had grit. They meant to stay free or go down together. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and comment if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time on Crime Time, baby.